basically robot horses. That's really cool because that is from
Vampire Hunter D. Yep.
I was like, yes, the robo horses are back.
Yeah. Hi, welcome to Nothing Venture, Not the Game. I'm your host with the most, your GM Jared, and tonight I'm joined by Steve.
Yep.
And we're going to be doing a general overview of the latest book dropped by Paizo, Guns and Gears, for Pathfinder Second Edition. So stick around. We're talking about Guns and Gears. Basically, Guns and Gears introduces a few new things. First off, guns and gears. Besides introducing
that's it, folks.
That's it, you guys. That's it. We're done. It also introduces the two new classes, the Gunslinger and the Inventor. Both use respectively guns and gears. And
you're gonna hear that a lot this episode.
Yes, I'm sorry. These are the jokes you come for. Additionally, they introduce two new ancestries. You have the Autonomaton, which is basically a literal
automation.
Yeah, it's literally you're a transformer. Can we say transformer?
Yeah, a sentient robot.
You're a sentient robot. You're the T-800 and a dwarven ancestry called the Dungun
Dwarf ancestry.
The Dungun Dwarf ancestry, which basically is the ancestry of the dwarves in Alkenstar, where guns were like invented in the Paizo universe, in the Pathfinder universe. So those are the big things that kind of come with this. So you have your Inventor class, your Gunslinger, and the two new ancestries. You also get a bunch of backgrounds. Most of them are rare, are common backgrounds and rare. You get both for gears, focus characters and gun focus characters.
So you're going to see a lot of differentiation between gears character and gears character options and guns character options and gun equipment. And they very much had made this clear into the introduction that they've kind of shoved 2.5 books together, whereas the one book is the gears book, the one book is the guns book, and then the final chapter, similar to Secrets of Magic, was kind of just like, it's called the rotating gear. It's kind of where more of the lore is, and also that other ancestry, the dwarf ancestry, is also located there. But it gives you a lot of gear, a lot of information of how technology has affected certain parts of the world, like Absalom, the Shackles, Tianze, just various parts of the world, and how guns and gears has affected them over time.
Yep. So with that being said, the first half of this is we're just going to kind of talk about very quick overview of the classes, which I really liked. So I'm going to leave it on to Steve because Steve really enjoyed the Inventor class. So Steve, why don't you take us through a very quick overview of what you're getting for the Inventor class?
The Inventor class is similar to if you ever wanted to play Iron Man in a fantasy setting. It's you kind of pick what, and you're very heavily into crafting, similar to the Alchemist, but the kind of where the similarities end. You basically both get crafting as a class skill. We're going to go through all the proficiencies when we do our specific deep dives into each class, but you're really focused on crafting, and you get to pick one specific thing that's kind of like your creme de la creme, the one thing you've been working on for decades. And it can either be a weapon, a piece of armor, or a companion, an automaton companion. And you get different benefits for like the armors. You get to pick one type of armor that you get different damage reductions depending on the armor you pick. You get different, if you pick the gun, you get different traits and different guns that you can, you different weapons, not specifically guns, different weapons you can pick and what traits and what kind of damage it deals. Or you can pick your automaton, in which you get a couple other different options with your robot companion. But you also get a couple of cool abilities, like you can make your automaton explode.
Yeah,
or your
weapon.
Yeah, your item that you pick. You get to make it explode, and it could potentially hurt others and also yourself, and also it.
Yeah, so that's the Inventor for the most part.
Yeah, so the idea of the Inventor is not only are you focusing in on this one specific your masterpiece weapon, but you also are always constantly making little gadgets and gizmos to do other things, which is shown in some of the feat selection, where it's not necessarily a feat that's focused on your one thing. Some of it, it's like, oh yeah, you made this gadget to get this benefit for a short amount of time. And they also introduced the unstable trait, which means every time you use it, there's potential that the item kind of blows up and can't be used for a while.
Yep. Good with the Inventor.
Yeah. I really like the Inventor. It's an interesting take on how, like I said, because we've had non-magic classes before, but in this one, it really takes it to that next level of your, like I said, they have this weird clockwork machine weapon, or you're in this weird set of power armor.
Yeah. I really like the Inventor. I think the Inventor is really fun, and it gives you a wide breadth of like character concepts. Especially if you're like me and I don't like killing pets, and I don't like putting pets in harm's way. So like the ranger with the pet,
who cares?
Yeah, it's a freaking robot, man. Just go in there, figure it out, blow yourself up. Just do it. I told you. The next class you get is the Gunslinger, and I actually like this Gunslinger more than I like the first edition Gunslinger. So the first, if you didn't play first edition Pathfinder and you're kind of just coming into second edition Pathfinder, the original Gunslinger and Pathfinder, there was 2 armor classes more or less. You had your AC and then your touch AC. So it was easier to hit. That's how Gunslingers hit. They shot you on your touch. In this, vastly different. And I really like how they changed everything. So Gunslinger, you basically are you get way of the gun, style of fighting. So think similar to Monk. Or
rogue,
or rogue
racket.
Yeah, like a racket, similar to those. If those are basic classes, and they all do something differently. So my favorite one is the Vanguard, the way of the Vanguard, and the way of the Vanguard gives you a skill. So it gives you athletics, and then it says you get an action. Right, all of them give you some kind of action. For the Vanguard, it says if you're using a 2-handed firearm, you can shoot your 2-handed firearm. And then you can make a shove attempt at your standard attack bonus. So if it's your first action, it's still at full 2 hit without map. If you're second, you're at a -5, right? So it's really cool. You get to make a shove. And as you shove for a single action, you also reload. And then you can fire again. And I was like, oh, that's so freaking cool. Because who doesn't want to do that? Well, in my head, I was like, that's so cool. Because you can make a frontline shotgun fighter. Gunslinger. Gunslinger in this one is a little different. My understanding of Gunslinger is you're actually there to do a lot of other things. You have a lot of abilities to do cool other things. So statuses like shoving enemies to put them into a proper position. Because if you're using like a blunderbuss, that gives you a cone fire shot. You might want to push a single target into their friends and then you take them all out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool things with the Gunslinger, and then not focused around heavy damage. I originally thought they would be like the Ranger, where like they're focused around their gun, but they're not in this. They are, but they're not dramatically about like
you can pick either guns or crossbows, which is actually a harken back to first edition, because the first edition Gunslinger had an archetype where you can be a crossbow expert instead of a gun expert. But in this one, the way they made guns within balance of the system, but still technically like it's a gun versus a sword, is that most firearms do have the fatal trait.
Yes.
So in that way you are looking for to crit to gain that benefit. But they like I said, like they do a lot.
Yeah.
They do a lot of different things. You can focus in on not necessarily just doing damage, but doing cool stuff. Yeah,
like you could trip people, shove. You have high athletics, so you could trip someone and then shoot them while they're on the ground, or high dex to tumble out the way. So they're really cool classes. It's a really cool class. I really like the Gunslinger. I know a lot of people say, no guns in my campaign because it breaks immersion. That's a different conversation for a different day. My take on that as a GM was always, you can use a gun, but the enemies in the other room are going to hear the gun.
Yeah.
No matter how much you think a silencer silences a shot, it's not like the movies. So that's my take on Gunslinger. Jumping back into it, you then have new items. I mean, that's the only really way to describe this. It's gears, and it's everything. Like they have a printing press now in here. They have
they have a variety of different types of items. They have like gadgets, which are like little trinkets that kind of do
different things.
Yeah, different things.
Yeah.
They have combat gear, which is more akin to what we've already been used to, but now it's more of like a mechanical way of doing it instead of a magic way of doing it.
Yeah.
They have siege weapons, so if you ever wanted to have like big scale battles and you want to either have the players assault a keep or they want to defend a keep, they're gonna have siege weapons. That gives you rules for that. They increased snares and hazards, which is always a good thing because I would say the snares and hazards were a little lacking in the core rulebook, and through other books they've been slowly increasing like what kind of hazards the players can come across, what kind of hazards the players can create, also snares and how they're used. They have this new thing called and I'm going to horribly butcher this name, Statistician Tech. It's it's one of the things they made mention of it. It's a very rare thing, but it's a very rare technology from a particular part of the world. And most of the options are uncommon or rare in that section.
Oh yeah.
But it's just like crazy weird technology.
It's really cool stuff, but it's super rare.
Yeah.
It's meant like if your players find this, it actually can alter the game dramatically.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't want to say that it's akin to artifacts, but it could be close to akin to artifacts where it's like super powerful, weird stuff that it's just weird.
Yeah.
We have utility gear, which is what Jared was alluding to before, where this is mundane equipment that may or may not be useful to the players. Like there's rules for printing press.
A walking library.
And there's a walking bookcase.
Yeah.
But then there's also things like what was that?
Oh, a diving suit.
A diving suit, or like a almost like a helmet that looks like Black Manta, lets you breathe underwater and see. So
more goggles. A heated cape was the cool one.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how like you would use that in either a cold region or even a possibility of like
underwater.
Like if you're dealing with underwater, you can heat yourself up with the cape.
So yeah, similar to what we were talking about in Back to the Future 2 when he hits the button and it dries himself after he gets trapped in the water. Then we go to mobility devices, which are other ways that your character can move around. Like I said, they mention basically combat wheelchairs. They mention other sort of like boots that let you walk on the wall.
There's the spider chair.
Yeah, the spider chair,
which was pretty cool.
And then they have also just generic vehicles that will come. They actually have a mechanical horse.
Yeah, if you've ever seen Vampire Hunter D and he rides that mechanical horse, it looks very similar to that design. The cyber horse. And it's really cool. It's very steampunk. I really like the artwork's always fantastic in these books. If you can't see it, there's the artwork on Steve's monitor over there. But also, I'm gonna steal the book from you, Steve. If you can't see it, this is the cover of Guns and Gears, and you got this beautiful layout. You have your two new iconics, which is an orc, Inventor. I don't know what their proficiency is because they have the little robot guy, the Automaton, but they also have like a robot arm, which is one of the new Gears things you can do. Is you can get kind of like a full metal alchemist like mechanical limb. And it does really cool stuff. You can build a character around that limb and having them really do cool stuff.
Yeah, so talk about that mechanical horse. That's it right there. So yeah, you can definitely have a cyber horse.
Cyber horse.
Yeah. So this is a lot of all the different types of Gears equipment. They, like I said, various common, uncommon, rare of this. What was the rarity on the Gunslinger? Was that also uncommon?
Yeah, the Gunslinger is uncommon, and that is the new iconic Gunslinger, who I really think is dope. I'm a fan of dwarves as an ancestry, and to see a new iconic dwarf makes me happy. Because we have a lot of like the tinier races, gnomes, halflings.
Yeah. And a lot of humans.
And it's cool to see an orc and a dwarf. We haven't had orc or even half orc.
Plus, they have just going back to it, they have a bunch of different archetypes. So archetype, the inventor archetype if you want a multi-class, but also a variety of other archetypes that kind of focus in on specific gear technology, which may or may not have to be an inventor. I don't think that we have to look at the requirements, but just let you like one of them is like the vehicle mechanic.
Yeah.
So
or the trick driver. So there are vehicles now in this game, and if vehicles are important in your campaign, it's cool. Because you could take the trick driver or the mechanic. If
vehicles, even just trapsmith or make traps.
And they did add more snares and hazards.
Yeah.
With Gunslinger again, they added more archetypes, so you have really cool stuff like the pistol phenom or the spell shot, or the one I really think is cool, which is the beast gunner. And obviously, we're not diving. Well, we'll get into those but beast guns are a new type of firearm.
Yeah, let's go into the gear for the guns equipment.
The guns. All right. So basically, you have your standard firearms, which your firearms can range from a flintlock musket to a blunderbuss to multiple different things. Those are your pistols.
Yeah.
You have a lot of like standard firearms. Think, like
14th century Victorian
era. Yeah, you have like a cloak pistol. A lot of
a repeating pistol or a repeating rifle.
Yeah, so you're not getting like an AK-47, sadly, or a Tommy gun. You're not getting any of those. After that, they have something really cool called the beast guns, and these are.
I have to show you a picture of this.
Yeah, these are so freaking cool. If you've ever played like Monster Hunter, right? And you kill a monster and you harvest it for bits and stuff. That's kind of what these guns do. They're very rare. So they're rare to begin with, and they're hard to kind of maintain. But if you see in these photos...
We'll get a big blown up picture on the screen, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, beast guns are hilarious.
Yeah, the beast guns do really cool things. They're quasi-intelligent. I don't think they're like hyper, but they have like an essence of the animal in them. And you could build an entire like character around being like the beast gun master. It's a really cool class. I want to get into it. Then you have your cobbled firearms, and these are like basically if you let a goblin have a firearm that was busted. There's no good way to put it. It's kind of like I have this firing pin from here, and I have this barrel from here, and I'm just gonna add some freaking Mountain Dew in the mix, and then hopefully it works.
Yeah, I guess that's also a way for you to, if you didn't want to add guns in that were available at first level, you wanted, maybe it is something that your characters, if you had one or two characters that were really into crafting, you could allow them to either come across or develop some parts that they would have. Maybe it's not a gun that's specifically in the classic firearms, but they're able to make something like that, or like you said, just
it's a super interesting thing. And then you have your different ammunition that they kind of put in. There's new ammunition, spell shots and stuff like that. And then you have black powdered siege weapons. And again, we spoke about that before, where there were now siege gears, and now there are like cannons and well, they're always cannons, but like just siege gear. It's crazy stuff. Like it's kind of out there. I could see it being played like if you're like, hey man, like let's assault like a castle, or like defend our,
or even using fort. The rules from, I can't remember what book it came out, but the large scale battle.
Oh, that was the bestiary.
Oh yeah,
with the armies, where you could have
so
like
you can literally have like one of the large scale troops manning the specific weapon as one of their actions.
So you could kind of get very wargamey now. I feel with that, like you could have like
again. I mean, how iconic is it to be like 15th level characters are assaulting the keep or defending their castle from the invading giants or whatever?
Oh man, I want to shoot a giant with a cannonball and kneecap now.
I mean, come on,
that sounds pretty fun. Yeah, so you could do all that. Then there are the combination weapons, and this was again a lot of really interesting stuff, and it would like we'd be here for like 3 hours just going over everything.
Every option,
the best way to put a combination weapon is, again, going kind of back to the Monster Hunter. I don't know if the designers of the game are playing like Monster Hunter when they were designing this, because you have like the beast weapons, and then you have like the combination weapons, and the combination weapons are like, imagine like you have like an axe that you could then turn into like a
rifle,
yeah, it's like that's the best way to put it. Like you're just like axe rifle. So
the two things that I'm reminded of even before, because I know of Monster Hunter, but I haven't played a lot of it. The two things I remember is Dargo from Farscape, where his sword turned into a laser rifle.
Yes,
and then the other thing was the and from Final Fantasy VIII Squall with the gunblade.
Yeah, actually there is a gunblade in here, so you too can have a gunblade. Which is pretty cool. And then, like I said, they get into, after we talked about the gears equipment, they go into the rotating gear, which is your lore.
Yeah, there's also tools and accessories that you just go over, kind of random stuff that Gun's character will have.
Yeah. The Gunslinger class and guns have evolved from first edition. So first edition, when you looked at a gunslinger or even firearms, most people had never seen these, right? So you have to understand, first edition was very magical world, and then we put firearms in, and it was super rare and super uncommon to see this.
Yeah, and the at least the lore from the original first edition Gunslinger was you kind of developed like no one ever seen it. Like you didn't go to a shop and say, "Let me have that revolver right there." No. You actually spent time and crafted your own firearm, which made it also somewhat unreliable to use, and no one else could ever use it. In this one, there's now more of established lore of like an entire. I'm not sure if it's a nation or a city.
A nation,
that
Alkenstar
kind of started focusing on technology and developed like low-level firearms and started coming out with this. And I'm not sure if they also did gears in that city too, or they just did guns, or they were separate.
I think it's kind of like both came from that nation. And then like that spread out, like Absalon being like kind of like the central hub, or like I like to call it the Manhattan of the Pathfinder Golarian, because we're from New York, so everything is better here. But like everything came to this one hub and then kind of spread out. So you have now guns being in your world. If you want to put them, obviously it's your world. Do what you feel comfortable doing there. I already know a few of my players have announced interest in playing with firearms and gears. So I'll figure that one out. Again, the artwork, if you go to like, literally there's a beast gunner and they are so awesome. They are holding a dragon two-handed rifle. And it's so awesome because it's like very the characters just look awesome. Like it's again the artwork, and then you have
the beast gunner is standing who looks like they're from the Mwangi Expanse, standing next to a giant robot, which is the Automaton, next to what looks like a inventor. Yeah,
definitely an inventor.
Inventor with a weapon.
Pistol, a musket.
Yeah.
And they all look freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And it's just a really cool book. Guns are well balanced. I have to say guns are very well balanced. There's a reload on every single firearm, even if they have the capability to shoot multiple rounds. The reload on like the repeating aspect is always 2. So that's 3. Sorry, it's a full round. 3. Sorry, I was building a character earlier and they were getting better at reloading.
Okay. So that's true for repeating firearms
and crossbows.
So now they have different repeating crossbows as well. So they've expanded the crossbows as well because some gunslingers can use crossbows as well as some other gunslingers can use firearms.
Yeah, and really interesting. I like how they balance it. It's like, okay, yeah, man, you could shoot like 6 times, but on that after that 6th shot, your whole turn is
3 actions.
It's to literally reload, and I love that. I think that's a solid balance because because remember. You could shoot 6 times, but you could also take 3 actions in your turn to just unload, and then another 3 actions to unload, and then you have to go, can the wizard haste me so I can reload and then take one more shot? You know, so it's very well balanced. Most large firearms are 2 action reload.
Yeah.
Single shot firearms, 1 action, which is very similar to the crossbow. Concept.
And I'll even say that the repeating firearms are balanced in the fact that they lose some traits that other firearms have. So most firearms, like I said, have fatal for the most part. The repeating ones do not. They lose fatal, and they may lose 1 or 2 other things to get the fact that they don't have to reload for a number of turns.
Yeah. Additionally, so guns do have a lot of different traits now. So you have kickback, which it's so powerful. It deals 1 additional damage. But firing a weapon gives you a -2 penalty to attack roll. If you're strong enough, you can hold it.
If you have a strength of 14 or better, then you can ignore it because you're strong enough to hold that kickback.
Does concussive, which basically negates immunity and resistance for certain types of damage. So if it's immune to bludgeoning, it's nope, you're concussing them. So it's pretty cool.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Concuss.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Or if it has 2 weaknesses and your weapon applies to both of them, use the lesser of the 2.
Oh yeah. So it gives you a lot more.
That's nice.
And then we talked about repeating a few times, so that's obviously a important one to keep an eye out for. But there's also scatter, which is on like a lot of like the large barrel firearms. And this one shoots kind of like in a cone, and there'll be scatter 10, which means it's a 10-foot cone, or scatter 5, which means it's a 5-foot cone. So that's really cool, especially like if you're playing a character that wants to be semi in the fray with a scatter gun, you could kind of start clearing out enemies in the back. On a hit, the primary target takes the full attack, and then everyone behind it kind of takes splash. So it's like a grenade.
Okay.
Very similar to a grenade. But I mean, 1 point of damage, you know, on early levels is a lot.
Yeah, it takes a 1 point of splash damage per weapon die.
Yeah. So if you have a, you know, 2, they take 2. You know, it's not going to like destroy everything, but it changes.
Still, it's nice extra damage.
Yeah, extra damage is extra damage. Never be afraid of extra damage. So those are kind of like the generic traits, and then you have a lot of stuff where like you could put a bayonet on your weapon or stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like weapon mods you can put on your, like stabilizers, and they like I said, goes back into that section on the cobbled together weapons. They give you a whole bunch of different weapon parts.
Yeah.
They also gave you obviously the critical specialization, if you have it, for firearms, is they have to succeed a 14 against your class DC, or they're stunned 1.
Yes.
Which is big.
Yeah, stunned 1 negates an entire action.
Yep.
Off of the character, off the enemy, the character, whatever you're dealing with. So you get hit once, you're stunned 1.
That sucks.
That's terrible.
And not only did you just took a whole bunch of damage.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about building like a sniper, that's a complete possibility. You go critical specialization, grab a musket and a tripod, because they do have tripods. You open it up and you just lay down shots, and you end fights very quickly. You and the barbarian, you stun up enemies, and the barbarian's in the mix, just chopping and hacking. Be pretty fun. So that is our general overview of the book and what you're going to be getting with this book. Like we said, you get backgrounds, you get the 2 new ancestries, 2 new classes, and a ton of items and a ton of new things to add to your game, that if you want to add to your game. Now we're going to get into kind of our dislikes, because unlike many of the other books, there was a glaring problem with this one. And they do say they kind of put 2 books into one, and I think they ran with that statement a little too far.
Hard. Yeah.
So I didn't like what happened, and Steve hated it a lot more than me. So Steve, go ahead. Preach.
All right. So if you've looked at most other, now this problem isn't going to be a problem if you mostly go digital.
Yeah.
You mostly go digital. This, you're not even probably going to notice this problem because you're just looking at the options themselves and kind of like a vacuum. But if you're like me and you use kind of both, and sometimes grabbing the book that's right next to you and you know where that section is, because in every book, the equipment section's like right past the spell section, and you just open it up and I go, there's the options I was looking for. This is going to be a harder pill to swallow. So normal books, they would have your ancestries first, because it starts with A. And then your backgrounds, all the backgrounds would be collated together in backgrounds. Now you'd have common, and then you'd have uncommon. They just split it that way.
Yeah,
so they'd have all the common together, and then they'd have the next section would be the uncommon ancestry backgrounds, and then rare if they haven't. We actually, this book does have rare and rare backgrounds. And then you'd have the classes. And then typically you would go into skills, feats, spells if there are any in the book,
items,
and equipment, all the different types of equipment separated by sections.
Yeah.
And then if there's, then they want to intermix lore and whatnot in there. In Secrets of Magic, they kind of went lore heavy in the front of the book.
Yeah.
Which is fine. They also had lore in the back of the book as well, because it's kind of different parts of the lore. So you can say that they kind of split it there. But in this book, they separated it into everything gear is up front. So you first start with the Inventor. Now, I know a lot of people want to get straight to the class, but then you go right past that and then into the ancestry, the Automaton.
Yeah.
And then it goes into all the different archetypes. And then it goes into all the gear equipment. And then it goes right back to Gunslinger. And then you just repeats the process all over again. The problem is when I'm looking for a piece of gear, I might want to, like, maybe we're allowing the whole book, right?
Yeah.
So I'm playing a gear character, but maybe firearms are a big part of the game. So I want to look at the gear options, like, firearm options, or maybe my firearm character, but there's nothing preventing me from using a gear. No. Like I want to put on, I want a damn robot horse as I'm riding into town with my blunderbuss.
Yeah.
Not have to it's a lot of different flipping back and forth. And I would think that the most egregious issue I have with this book is the 2 ancestries are separated literally from the front of the book to the back of the book. I honestly almost missed the actual second ancestry unless I saw it in the table of contents. I went, why is the ancestry? Let me look at that. And I literally found the dwarf ancestry was in the back section of the book, in the lore section. And I'm like, people are going to miss this stuff because they're not going to be looking for it because they're so used to having everything in the, and even Secrets of Magic had the same things. They had all the different magic items. There's different magic traditions. I mean, obviously that book focused more on prepared casters and how they do things, but there's still items for all the different traditions. They put them all in their appropriate sections in the equipment section. They didn't decide to separate everything out. I don't know what, I don't know, like I said, I think they went with that idea too hard of this is 3 books kind of put together.
Yeah.
And it makes it really hard to digest the actual physical book. And I could spend an hour complaining about this, but
this would be just a video of Steve complaining. So again, they do split the book basically, and it's physically split, like artwork design splits the book. So if you look at gear characters, right, you'll see how the border is this beautiful copper
and steampunky
gears, and it looks like steampunk, right?
Like an inventor's workshop.
Yeah, like an inventor's workshop. And then you see me flipping because I have to go to the other half of the book, which is guns, right? And then it goes back into introductions, right? So now we have to reintroduce this half of the book. And it says gun characters, right? Cool, giant.
Cool, nice double spread. See, this is one thing I like. This is one thing I like. The double spread artwork
is always amazing, yeah. And now we have guns, and then the borders are like this dark silver guns. There's filigree all over it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, the gunpowder barrels.
Yeah, you see them burning up a little bit. It's beautiful, but the book is physically split into 2 halves, and it's very interesting as to, again, it's a bit confusing. Obviously, you'll figure it out. We can all figure it out.
Yeah.
It just was a bit jarring from the standard they had set. They set the standard where it kind of went in this pattern, and then this book broke the pattern. I love how Secrets of Magic and Guns and Gears are both, how can I say this? They've embraced what they are. So Secrets of Magic, when you looked at it, it had all that beautiful artwork on it, and it was magic. And then this, again, like we said, the borders and the filigree and the artwork, it embraces Guns and Gears, which is beautiful. They just split it. And I mean, we're obviously rambling about this because we're passionate about this section. But we're going to move away from the hate and come back to the love. So Steve, where do you stand on this book? Is it like a pickup? Is it a need, or is it a pass?
I think it all depends on your particular game. And obviously we all love character options. And even if you're not, I mean, yet again, there's a dwarf ancestry in here, and I really didn't spend too much time on the dwarf ancestry if it's really guns or gears heavy.
It's from the nation of guns, like where their guns are created. So,
but if you're talking with your GM, I mean, obviously DM, it's always good to have options.
Yeah,
it's always good. Yet again, there is some lore, and it does focus around guns and gears, but how that's affected. So if you don't want to mess with it, then obviously you don't need the lore. But
I'm just going to interject. Read the lore stuff, because one of the APs from first edition, and remember, Pathfinder Second Edition, unlike other systems out there, is a continuation of a single narrative or world, a single world. So it's been going. The history has been going. One of the APs, you might not to ruin it. It's been out for quite some time. So if I spoil things, I spoil things. But your characters wind up fighting Baba Yaga and wind up going to Earth Realm. I'm going to use that from Mortal Kombat. You go to Earth Realm, our realm. You fight Rasputin well, I guess it's pre-Soviet Russia, but it's during the Bolshevik Revolution. But you go there during World War I, and your characters are now fighting in World War I Russia, in the trenches, fighting Rasputin, because he's I think he's a child of Baba Yaga, if I understood that story, or was studying under her because he was like a witch. But yeah, and they talk about that in this book. They go into the lore of World War I firearms and why they're in here, and I love it. I love it. Sorry, so the lore is there. Please read the lore.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not saying the lore isn't important. My point is that if you don't really want guns and gears in your game, most of the lore is not going to help you.
No,
because you're not going to include it anyway, because it revolves around how guns and gears affected the world. So if your table and most of your games really say, no, we don't want guns and gears, you can kind of leave this book, because it's all of that. But for the most part, is like, look, if you ever want to just play a pirate game and you want to add skulls, you know, the old first edition AP Skulls and Shackles, and you want to have people walking around with flintlock pistols and shooting off the ropes and stuff.
Yeah.
You want to get this book. If you want to have people walking around with weird automaton power armor, weird weapon, then yeah, go ahead and pick this up. I don't think that for the most part, book is a problem because it's just options. You can take certain options. You go, okay, well, I like these options. I don't like those options. It's just all about what works in your game, how your DM feels, how your table feels. But I mean, obviously, since I know a number of us had already said there's interest, I think there's some cool stuff in here.
Oh yeah, definitely. I know for me, it's not a must, but it was a definite must for me. Besides being a collector, because I am a collector, I collect the books. I hoard knowledge. I am part dragon. I have a hoard of books. You might have gold, but I hoard books. It was a must. I love the artwork. Paizo artwork, Wayne Reynolds, amazing artwork as always. Even the other people who do art for the books, it's awesome. Just the artwork itself, I keep the books. I look at the art to inspire me for my games. Do I think guns are going to make a huge appearance in our current Wrath of the Righteous campaign in second edition? No, I don't think. If a player dies and is like, I would love to come back as like an inventor, sure, maybe. We have been toying around with the idea. Oh, well, this is another thing. Inventor and Gunslinger, to me, changed. You can now play an entire campaign. If you use guns and gears, you can play an entire campaign as robot people. And just basically, you could play through, you know, Transformers. You guys could be robots in disguise. There is a whole from the 80s where
yes, we're old.
Your characters were on the Ark and it crashes into Galarian, and your characters are now robots in disguise, and you're fighting the Decepticons. If you really want to, which I thought would be freaking awesome. But yeah, I like this book. I think it's a fun book. The design, questionable. I want to see what the next book.
Hopefully, for my sake, they go back to the
original design.
The original design.
And they don't start splitting books. I think this one might have been the split, which is interesting.
Yeah, like I said, they kind of leaned in on the idea that they know some people are okay with the gears section, but they're not okay with guns, or they don't really like the weird steampunk gears thing, and they just like they want to add guns in the game. And I think that's the reason why they split it. I think it's an unnecessary step for them to do.
So we really hoped you enjoyed our conversation on guns and gears. There's a lot of pros and cons with this book, unlike our other videos where there's just mostly pros. This one had a con, which kind of spices thing up. And speaking of spice, we are Nothing Venture, Nothing Game, giving advice, rolling dice with a little bit of that New York spice. Say goodnight, Steve.
Later.
Bye.